Hey everyone, welcome to another modern set review, taking a look at Streets of New Capenna. Alright, so this set is definitely interesting. I like the art style, I like the cards that were printed in it. In terms of cards that are going to be hitting modern, I don't think we're going to be seeing too much of a shakeup unless the collective hive mind of modern has missed something obvious. But I'm going to go through the usual setup here, cards that I think are cool but are definitely not going to see play. And then we're just going to go up and up on the list, up to cards that I think are definitely going to see play. So before I get to my list, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button below and that like button, even that notification bell. Those 3 clicks go a real long way in supporting this channel. So if you're already subscribed, would really appreciate your support today. Let's start with the cards that are cool, but I mean, just to me, no one's really talking about them, and they will almost certainly not see play in modern. Starting with Black Market Tycoon. I like this card. It's a cat rogue, which is interesting to me. For 2 mana, it's a 2/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, Black Market Tycoon deals 2 damage to you for each treasure you control. Fine. And you can tap it to create a treasure token. So this is kind of like a mana dork, or 2 CMC mana dork. But the treasure tokens are pretty cool. It's an artifact which can be useful in certain scenarios. And of course, being able to create any color mana is also useful. Keep in mind, you can sacrifice the token at any time and avoid the 2 damage. So you could just create the token. If you don't end up needing it, you could just, crack it and not have to pay the 2 life, and you can just do that every turn. It's cool. It's cool. I'm probably not going to see any play anywhere, but I thought it was pretty cool. Security Bypass, 2 CMs, 1 blue, 1 colorless for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature, as long as enchanted creature is attacking alone, it can't be blocked. Enchanted creature has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, it connives. In my rogues decks, Teamer rogues, Sultai rogues, you name it, this is already a theme that exists. Not the connives part, but the looting part does exist. Being unblockable does exist, so I'm gonna try this out in my rogues decks, because an enchantment is another card type I could have in a graveyard. It also helps out those decks quite a bit. So it's a card that's on my radar, but it's definitely not on most people's radar, and understandably so. Next are the cards that are likely not going to see play in modern, but I keep an open mind for many reasons. Halo Fountain. So for the only reason Halo Fountain is on this list is because it has the ability of untap a tap creature you control. I didn't look too long to see what this could potentially break, but it's very rare to have abilities that untap tap creatures. So for me, that put it already on my radar. And there are effects, cards that already exist that allow you to do that. But this card also allows you to do that. So again, it's on my radar. I really don't think it's going to do anything. But I figure I'm always pretty thorough. Well, I try to be thorough in a lot of these lists. So I'm keeping Halo Fountain there in case. But it probably won't see play. But it's on the list for a reason. Now, Fleetfoot Dancer, I actually like. I looked, and there's nothing in Naya for 4 CMC at 4/4 power and toughness that gives you trample, lifelink, and haste. It gives you that gives Naya mid-range ability, which is pretty cool. So Fleetfoot Dancer, and it's an elf druid. Obviously, it's not really going to make any room for elf decks because elves don't need it, but still, that is something. I trample, lifelink, haste is that's something. With a 4/4 body for 4 CMC. It's on my radar again. I still don't think it's really going to make anything. I'll probably brew with it, because again, you could build a pretty interesting mid-range deck around it, but no one else is really talking about it for good reason. Endless Detour. I like this for a few reasons. I don't think it'll ever really see main board play, that's for certain. But sideboard play, maybe. The owner of target spell, non-land permanent, or card in a graveyard puts it on top or bottom of their library. This can be used offensively, this can be used defensively. It's essentially, it could work as a counter spell in many ways. Well, not really a counter spell, but it could stop a spell from resolving, at least temporarily, or it could get rid of a non-land permanent temporarily, or it could get rid of a card in your opponent's graveyard, your graveyard. There are a lot of ways you could use this. Not bat and bant colors. So again, it's there. Endless Detour. I don't really think it's going to make much of a splash in modern, but maybe. You never know. Maybe. Next, cards that people will almost certainly try either in main boards or sideboards. Whether they'll stay in modern for the long haul and make a real permanent effect on the format is hard to say. Witness Protection, I just like it because in a lot of blue decks they don't necessarily have access to black or white. This is a nice sideboard card. For 1 CMC, you essentially turn off a creature. It loses all abilities, it's green and white citizen, and has base power toughness 1/1. So if you don't have an easy way to remove them and you don't want to necessarily vapor snag them or bounce them, essentially, you can make them into a 1/1 and then easily take care of them by, bolting them or something. So Witness Protection is, it's on my radar for sure, because I play Reality Shift in the sideboard of a lot of my decks, and now Witness Protection is really interesting. So for me, at least, it's almost certainly going to see sideboard play. We'll see what others think of it in their decks. An Offer You Can't Refuse. Counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. Now, a 1 CMC counter target non-creature spell and no other constraints, that's pretty good. Giving them 2 treasure tokens, not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Now, in Modern, you gotta use this, on the right spell. You're not gonna counter like some useless non-creature spell. You're gonna, really target the main hitters. But you could also target your own spells, and this is why An Offer You Can't Refuse, I feel, is really on my radar. It could be used against your opponent. It'd also be used against you. Like, it could be used against a Mishra's Bauble, for example. Pay 0, cast Mishra's Bauble, and then counter it. And boom, you have, 3-4 mana, turn 2, really easily. Now, I know that's kind of a cheap thing. You're not going to build a deck around it, but it's a possibility, and there's probably dozens of other things, other types of plays you could do with this card. So it's on my radar. I don't think it's going to replace cards like Spell Pierce or Stubborn Denial or you name it at 1 CMC. But it's interesting. I'm still mulling over how good this card may be. Up next list, the Adversary. Honestly, I don't see this really happening. A lot of people are talking about it, so I feel like I should bring it up. Yes, you could have 2 Planeswalkers essentially on turn 2, but his abilities, especially the +1/-2, aren't necessarily the most staggering thing. I mean, they're not game-changing to me. Each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. If you control a demon or devil, you gain 2 life. So that second part of that ability is almost certainly never gonna shoot off. I mean, at least not on turn 2 or turn 3, most likely. And then each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. Okay, so you could shock your opponent every turn until they deal with it. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't think it's worth the casualty cost, but we'll see. Other people smarter than me are saying that this could be a thing. I don't buy it. I think we're not really going to see Omnixus making much of a splash long term. Shadow Mortality is also pretty interesting. It has a high CMC cost, but you could cast it for as little as 2 black, 7/7. It's definitely not a Death Shadow, but it might see some number of play in Death Shadow's decks. Once you're at 7 life or less, this is a 2 CMC 7/7. I don't see that much wrong with it. Of course, it could be used with other spells and other types of decks as well. And, it could make mill decks really annoyed because it's such a high CMC if you hit it. So it has many ways it can be played. I think we're definitely going to be seeing a lot of it the first couple of months. Long term, my guess is it'll be 1 or 2 of in Death Shadow decks. That's my guess, but we'll find out soon enough. Also, in cards that might see a modern play, Obscura Charm and Riveteer's Charm. I like the effects on both of these charms. They're all useful in different scenarios. They're rarely going to be dead cards when you draw them. 3 CMC is steep, so almost certainly will be sideboard cards, but nevertheless, these 2 are on my radar of all the charms that were printed in Streets of New Capenna. As for the cards that are definitely going to see play, Scheming Fence is a human citizen for 2 CMC, so already it's hitting very common creature types and CMCs and even power and toughness as other humans in the past that have made it into the humans' decks. And this is essentially a Pithing Needle on steroids on a stick. So it's really interesting. Almost certainly humans' decks are going to give it a shot in some number, and I think it'll likely see either sideboard or mainboard play long-term in humans' decks. That's just my guess. Based on its abilities, depending on what it hits, it becomes kind of like a thing you need to take care of immediately. So I'm really liking Scheming Fence long-term in modern. And there goes the voice cracks again. Void Render. I mean, Vindicate is still played in a lot of decks, in some number. Void Rend is a nice uncounterable way to destroy target non-land permanent. Not necessarily as wide casting as Vindicate, or wide reaching, I should say, as Vindicate, because Vindicate hits anything, and I believe exiles where it's here to destroy, but it's uncounterable, which is always important. So Void Rend almost certainly is going to see long-term play in Modern. Obviously not at high numbers, but it will definitely help out the colors that can play Void, the decks that can play Void Rend. Last but not least, Luxior, probably saying that wrong, Giada's Gift. Now, obviously this is not the type of card that I would play, not really my thing, but it's going to be one of those cards that is always going to be looked at by the players or the brewers who like to build decks that break things, because this is something that can easily break things, in particular things with Planeswalkers. So it's almost certainly going to see play early on in Modern. Long term, for me, it's 60-40 in terms of its viability in the format, but I think it's always going to be a card that creeps back up every time a powerful or semi-powerful Planeswalker, or even some card that, meshes well with Planeswalkers, is printed. So it's definitely going to be on my list pretty high up in terms of long-term playability. And of course, I don't really have to go into depth here, but the new Triomes, or the completion of the Triumph cycle, all the current Triomes see play in Modern in different numbers. These Triomes will also see play in different numbers. So it's really nice to see that the cycle completed, and they're definitely going to see play, so they're on my list. And that's it for my Modern set review. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought about my picks, what you would pick, what I got wrong, right. I love hearing from you and having that chat down below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you enjoy my content in general, please subscribe and hit that notification bell down below. Those few clicks go a really long way in helping others find my content and helps my channel grow. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook, share my content on social media. That also helps others find their way to my videos and spreads the word even further. And of course, if you like making money, check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description of this video. In particular, check out the Patreon Rewards program. Basically works like this. You give me your Patreon dollars every month. I buy and open up sealed product on this channel using those dollars. And I send you back that money at the end of every year in the form of rares and mythics. You get one non-bulk rare or mythic for every consecutive month you've been a patron, and every card is worth anywhere between $3 and $15. But I mean, even if you lowball it at an average of $5 per card, you're at the very least getting your money back, but odds are you're getting even more. There are a lot more details on my Patreon page, so check it out. Thanks, and have a good one.